Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Outpost Texas Democrats discussion of flipping the state house. I'm Mike Collier, and I'm delighted to be with you again this evening. I know many of you. I ran for Texas Lieutenant Governor in 2018, ran against Dan Patrick. El Diablo came close, and it was a wonderful experience. I'm not on the ballot, I'm still in the fight. 40 days and 40 nights until the most important election of our lifetimes. And we often say that, but this one means it. This is for real. I mean, this is such an important election cycle, and we've got to flip the House. And that's why you've joined us this evening, and I'm so delighted that you have. We've got some wonderful guests with us tonight. You've heard from the candidates. We've got to have 9 more seats gets us the Texas House. We would only be talking about 9 seats getting the Texas House because we had terrific success in 2018 with 12 seats, which got the Republicans' attention, got everybody's attention. And there are people listening from outside Texas who want to know what's going on down here. And I say, welcome. The candidates that won in 2018 in the Texas House are my heroes. I ran, I didn't win, but Julie Johnson won, and you're going to hear from her today. And Aaron Zwiener won, and you're going to hear from her today as well. Now, we need to give them money because we can't have a 1 step up and 2 steps back situation. Once we land a seat, we've got to keep it. Republicans are good at that. Democrats will be good at it as well. And just imagine what happens when we flip the House. We're 9 seats away. Where do you want to start? I want to start with gerrymandering. Gerrymandering, in my opinion, is the root cause of all of our political difficulties. It's designed for pure partisan purposes. Our founders would not have possibly contemplated that it would end up this way. And we've seen what happens in Texas. Texans are progressive people, lighthearted. Look at all the great things that we've done in the state. But we're controlled by a Republican Party, which is controlled by its primary voters, a slender minority of our state. So it's time for the majority to get back in control and become a progressive state like we used to be for so long. We won 12 seats in the House. We need 9 more. That's it. And then we can deal with gerrymandering. And then we can deal with public education, which is my passion, not sufficiently funded, in my opinion, and it's going to get worse because of COVID. We can deal with the health care. Expanding Medicaid. Imagine what that's going to do all over the state. For example, hospitals that are closing in rural Texas. We don't hear enough about that. You know, there are millions of Texans that are living outside the major cities who are absolutely terrified that they don't have access to a hospital nearby. There's places in this state where if you're a woman and you're pregnant and it's time to have the baby, there's not a doctor in town that will deliver that baby. You have to get in your car and drive a long, long ways. When we flip the House, we can deal with that. We can do these things and the other things and be so proud of the work that we've done. And it takes money. It takes money and it takes leadership. Again, you're going to hear this evening from Julie Johnson. It was a real honor to campaign with Julie. You knew that she was going to win, and she did. And you know that she is going to serve us so well. And also with Aaron Zwiener. We campaigned together. I never had any doubt that she would win. And I was so thrilled that she did. That election night was a thrilling night for me. I didn't win, but I was thrilled because of all the wonderful Texans, Democrats that got elected. So we got to keep a good thing going. Lastly, I want to remind you to give these good folks money. We can't do it without money. We've got a powerful message. It's a message that resonates. It resonates with Democrats, and the number of Democrats in Texas is increasing dramatically for all the right reasons. It also resonates with independents. There are a lot of people out there that don't really feel, one way or another about a party, but they're looking for leadership now, and we have a message, and when they hear that message, they come running and vote. But it takes money. So I want you to be very generous, just as you've been to the first timers, also to the incumbents that you're going to hear from tonight. So this is a very exciting time. And speaking of money, I want to thank our sponsors. Let's go through them. In advance, thank you so much for making this evening possible. And I'm going to read through them. 312th Family District Court Judge Clinton Chip Wells. 270th Civil District Court Judge Deidre Davis. Club sponsors. You got to love the clubs. I love the clubs. When I'm campaigning, it is just so much fun because they're such wonderful people, so passionate. This is a good versus evil fight, and you feel it every day in the energy that you draw by the handful from these organizations. Blue Bayou Democrats, Meyerland Area Democrats, Texas Democratic Women Harris County Chapter, Houston Stonewall Young Democrats, Southwest Democrats, Cy-Fair Area Democrats, Humble Area Democrats, Democratic Club of the Woodlands, Energy and Environmental Democrats, the Road Women, Cypress Tomball Democrats, Kingwood Area Democrats, that's where I am, Kingwood, Spring Democratic Club. Thank you to the club sponsors. Now to the royal sponsors. Former County Clerk, Dr. Diane Troutman. Thank you, Diane. Carl Jones. Thank you so much. Humble Area Democrats President John Cotter. Thank you so much, Mr. Cotter. Sapphire sponsors. Texas Senate District 3 Committeewoman Shirley Layton. I see Shirley everywhere on the campaign trail. Thank you so much, Shirley. Texas Senate District 7 Democrats, Attorney Mark Whitehead. Organizational sponsors, Powered by the People, Harris County Democratic Party, Flip the Texas House, Sisters United Alliance, Swing Left Texas, Indivisible Houston, and Blue Action Democrats. Again, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you all for joining. One parting comment from me, if I may. There are a lot of folks that can't be here tonight who've actually gone to Washington, D.C. to pay their respects to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a giant in the field and worshipped by Democrats and probably plenty of Republicans too. But she personified our values of integrity, great intellectual depth, compassion, devoted to the Constitution, devoted to the rule of law. And she did not suffer fools. And we're going to miss her terribly. And there are other Ruth Bader Ginsburgs out there. And I hope the young people are listening, and I'm delighted that she has inspired so many people and are going to get involved in politics. And so we miss her terribly. And so we just want to wish her family and all that love her and care for her the best. All right, so let's get into the evening. I'm very happy to turn it over to my good friends who are going to take it from here, Jaime Rodriguez and Carly Moser.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Another compelling opening segment there. We really love. We hang on your every word, so we're always happy to have you.
Well, what's the old saying? They were the best of times, they were the worst of times. It's inspiring to be in a fight when you know that the people on your team are good people. We joined this fight because of our goodness and our compassion. That's great. The bad part is what we're fighting against, which is frightening. But I will say one thing, if I may.
Yeah.
I have great confidence in the American public. I'm not anywhere near as frightened. As I said the other night, you cannot change the course of a mighty river. I mean, this is going to work. We just have to stay focused, keep our shoulder to this wheel. I know I'm mixing my metaphors. It happens when you get weary towards the end of a campaign. Our day is coming. We just have to stay on it. And the goal is to make it happen now because people are suffering. They need us to win. They want us to win. Our hearts will just be so full of joy on November 3rd when I watch Fox News and watch them go down with the ship. It's going to be fabulous. Anyway.
And for the audience, they're going to get a treat next week. It sounds like you're going to be on the road, so you'll be coming to us from who knows where, from the back of your truck.
Yeah, so thank you for raising that. I've gotten clearance from the campaign. I'm also serving as a senior advisor to the Biden campaign, and they're very conservative about COVID. We wanted to wait. I've gotten clearance to go out to some places with a mask, keeping my distance, washing my hands, but rounding up votes. And my pickup truck has been sitting in the driveway thinking, I want to work this problem. Mike, what happened to you? Oh, I can't wait.
Oh, excellent. Well, we're all jealous, but we'll be with you in spirit. And
we'll see you.
Sunday.
May your Texas truck have as much grit as you do.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you Sunday, Mike.
Okay, we'll see you.
Thanks. There we go. So,
right.
Ready for another good show?
I am. I'm really excited about the two women that we're going to be able to talk to this evening. It's going to be very, very inspiring. I know. I am just looking forward to introducing these two freshman representatives to the rest of the state and hopefully the country and, raise money and get everybody energized and organized. So how about you?
Excellent. Yeah. So on that note, let's take it away. Go ahead.
All right. Well, first we want to welcome from Texas State House District 115, Representative Julie Johnson.
Hi there.
Howdy.
And from Texas State House District 45, Representative Aaron Zwiener.
Hey, y'all.
Hey.
Howdy. Great to see both of y'all. So let me tell y'all how tonight's going to go. And for the audience, some very similar routine tonight. We're going to start off with an opening introduction by each of the elected officials. We'll give them each 1 minute, and I have the official time clock. So if you kind of see my hand going up, just kind of respect the time as much as possible all night long. We have a lot of questions and a lot of exciting things to ask you about, and so it makes it easier if we follow the time limits. And after that 1 minute introduction, we're going to do a little lightning round. And so Carly and I will ask you some basic questions just so that the audience can get to know you fast. Nothing tricky. This is not meant to stump you up or anything. This is just so that we can actually get to know you real fast. So just 1 or 2 word answers as much as possible during the lightning round. After the lightning round, then we're going to talk to you about your experiences as a freshman. And we'll do that for a little bit. And you'll see the kinds of questions we'll be asking you in that segment. And then we'll have a segment on issues of the day. So what we think is going to be talked about in the spring in 2021 and going forward. And then after all of that, the audience will have half an hour from 8 to 8:30 to ask you questions. So we have a team of people behind the scenes on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. They're collecting the questions, and Carly and I will ask them of you starting at 8 o'clock. And at the very end of the whole show, we'll give you a minute to close out. So if you kind of have the basic feel for the format, we're ready to go.
All right. So we'll start with Representative Julie Johnson.
Well, hello there. I'm Julie Johnson. I represent House 115, which is in Northwest Dallas County, the cities of Farmers Branch, Carrollton, Coppell, Irving. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law here in Dallas for 30 years. I actually went to law school at U of H. So I have a fond memory with Houston, and I have a lot of friends and family down there. Well, not family anymore, I guess, but friends down there. And, I serve as the vice chair of the Women's Health Caucus. I'm also a founding member of the LGBT Caucus, and I focus on healthcare policy in the state legislature. I have 2 sons, 17 and 20. So I have a senior in high school and a junior in college. And I'm really excited about this upcoming election. As you said at the introduction, the times couldn't be more important, and the issues aren't more dear to our community. We're running a tough race. We flipped a seat that was hard to win. I beat one of the authors of the bathroom bill last session, and they're coming at it again. I could definitely use your support. This is the fundraising deadline. As always, this is the big marker that shows viability of campaigns. So any contributions you could make today before the deadline would be most appreciated. Thank you so very much. I'm looking forward to the show tonight.
Thank you so much, Representative Johnson. And Representative Zwiener, you're up.
Yeah, I'm State Representative Erin Zwiener. I represent House District 45, Hays and Blanco counties, just southwest of Austin. My humble opinion is that it's the prettiest district in the state of Texas, but I'm aware some other members might try to compete with me for that. I am what we call an election night surprise. Not a lot of folks expected I would win my race until it was won. And now we're looking at one of the toughest re-elects in the state. So I am the only member of the Texas House with a professional background in conservation. I sit on the environmental regulation and agriculture and livestock committees. And I also am honored to be chairing the House Democratic Caucus's Policy Committee on Clean Air, Clean Water, and Climate Change. So we are getting ready to move forward on meaningful environmental protection and climate change legislation once we take the Texas House. And have the majority and can start pushing forward positive legislation. Like Julie, I am also a founding member of the House LGBTQ caucus. And I'm also very excited for the Democratic majority, because once we have that, that's when we will say no more to the state of Texas passing hate legislation.
Thank you so much, both of you. Wonderful introductions.
Great. So now we're going to start the lightning round. But before we do, Carly, if you want to tell the audience what their responsibility is tonight, what their responsibility is.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone watching us at home or wherever it is you're watching from, please, first of all, donate to these candidates to make sure that they have viable candidacies and viable campaigns. We want to make sure that they stay in the State House. We also want to have your questions throughout the night, so make sure to put those in the live comments either on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, and we will make sure to ask them your questions because your voice is what's important. You are the voter. Throughout the night, we will ask you to continue to donate to these campaigns, to volunteer for these campaigns, to make sure that we keep sanity and decency in our Texas State House. So continue watching and ask your questions so that we can ask these wonderful state reps your issues.
Okay, so lightning round, and if you don't mind, we'll just call you by your first names to keep it quick. So Erin, we'll start with you. Who is your opponent?
My opponent, oh shoot, I don't like to say her name, Jaime.
No, it's important for us to know who we need.
But my opponent's name is Carrie Isaac. She's actually the wife of my predecessor.
Oh.
She is far right on pretty much every issue you can name. In fact, I'm not sure which ones she is not. And, you know, she's very well funded, has some, we'll call them angel investors. I'm not sure that's the right term for this type of race. But she's very well funded. She's out on the ground. You know, I know that I'm right for this district. I know that I prioritize the environmental issues that are critical to our area.
I got it. Let's keep this as a lightning round. So let's just get the names. 1 or 2 word answers. Trust me, we'll give you plenty of time to expand on all of this. Julie, who's your opponent?
Karen Brownlee from Coppell, Texas.
Okay.
Julie, how long have you lived in your district?
2 years.
Erin?
4 years, but grew up one district over.
Okay, Erin, have you ever been elected to any office before this office?
Outside of high school clubs, no. This is my first office.
Okay.
All right.
And Julie?
Never been elected before this.
Wow, okay.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. That is very inspiring to me. Thank you. This is my favorite question to ask. Next spring, when President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris come to visit your district, Julie, where are you going to take them to lunch?
I'm taking them to Cuquita's Mexican restaurant with Elizabeth Villafranca. She's an amazing woman. Homemade Mexican food is some of the best in the district.
Love it. Erin, same.
I suspect we'll get some Salt Lick barbecue and drive down to Jacob's Well in Artesian Spring and have it Springside.
Wow, what a wonderful picture. Okay, Erin, who is your political hero?
Oh shoot, there's a lot, but at the moment, yeah, I'm still completely in love with Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, okay. And Julie?
It's a toss-up for me with Barbara Jordan, Ann Richards, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg right now. I mean, she's heavy in our hearts.
Yeah.
Yes. It's hard to even think and speak about her. She has said, what a loss, what a loss. And thank you, ladies, for carrying on such a great legacy that she has left us. Now, we know that Democrats are readers, voracious readers often, sometimes unlike our opponents. So I would like to know, and I see, Julie, you've got a bunch of books behind you. What is it, and you too, Erin, what is a book that you would recommend to our viewers?
On politics or just in general?
Whatever you like.
One of my favorite books is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. It's just an amazing story of women empowerment during World War II and how strong they are. And it's a great book.
Erin?
You know, I'm going to recommend a book by a good friend of mine that is coming out right after the election called Lightning Flowers by Catherine Standifer. And it's about the medical complex and her tracking where the physical materials in her own cardiac defibrillator came from. And so she travels to mines in Africa, she travels to plants, and really is trying to measure the cost of what it takes to save a life and that whole, the whole life cycle of these products.
Wow.
Women in healthcare. I love that. Both of you.
Right. Every book recommendation we've had in the last several weeks from candidates, and very impressive in a wide variety of topics. It's been very interesting. I cannot imagine the other side having that wide a breadth of knowledge, but going on. So let's go on to the next segment, which is actually now to talk about what it was to win. So let me start it off this way. Both of y'all had uphill battles. You flipped a seat, which is probably the most admirable way I think of to be able to win. You flipped a seat, but at this time, 2 years ago, you were in the nail-biting situation. You weren't exactly sure what was going to happen. You probably had some polls coming in, people telling you good things, bad things, whispering in your ears, some naysayers. How do you get past all of that negativity and push and convince people that it's doable, that it's winnable? How do we, and we have 17 that state house seats right now that are on the verge of flipping. We need to flip 9 of them. Give some advice to those 17 that are on the cusp, who might be making it, who are where you were 2 years ago. Erin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think we all have to dig deep and figure out what motivates us. And for me, what kept me going every single day in this really difficult race that a lot of people thought was just symbolic was hope. And I sort of adopted this space of irrational optimism. And I say irrational optimism because it was so bad that I couldn't really fact check myself and see, I kept saying, no, we have a real shot in this district. And I, in my head was like, I have no clue. I'm too optimistic to be reasonable. But I read the Politico interview or the profile on Judge Lina Hidalgo. And it really struck me that she, the morning after was telling someone, I told you I was going to win, because I sort of adopted that same position and told someone 2 days before the race that I was going to win by 3 points. I'm really grateful I was right, but that position of optimism kept me moving every single day.
Hey, Julie?
I think for me, I got my strength by just going and talking and meeting voters and just seeing the hope and how frustrated they were with the nastiness that my predecessor brought to politics. He got into a fight over immigration. He was an author of the bathroom bill. He's politics at its worst. And so to be able to be such a different vision of what politics can be about. But, I wanted to, if I have the liberty just to tell you a quick story,
Sure.
So I was door knocking, and I was in an apartment complex that by some standards wouldn't be considered some of the best, but right, wrong, or otherwise, it's where these folks lived, and they were on my list to go knock. And I knocked on the door, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for," it was the mother there. And these little girls answered the door. They were probably, I don't know, 5, 7-ish, like that. I said, "Hey, is your mama here? I'd like to talk to her about voting." And the husband came to the door, and he wasn't documented, and he says, "I can't vote." I said, "Well, it's all the more reason why your wife needs to vote, because she needs to take care of your family." And I'm talking, and these little girls, and I hand her, we all have lit that we pass out. It has all of our pictures on it and everything. And I handed them my lit, and this little girl, the youngest one, she looked at the lit, and she looked up at me, and she looked down at the lit, and she went, and she goes, "Is this you?" I said, "Yeah, that's me." She goes, "You're famous, and you're at my door."
Wow.
And, it just really struck me that, we have the opportunity to be role models as women and visions for these young girls. And when we take Democrats, the thing that makes us special is we take the time to go and visit all of our voters, not just voters that write us a check, but all of our voters. And I was telling that family, I said, "I need you to go vote. Early vote's going on right now, and I need you to go." And they ended up loading up all of them and went in the car, and she went and voted. And I know in my heart that woman probably was so busy and wouldn't have made the time to go vote had we not been there. So it's that interpersonal connection that makes such the difference.
That is incredible advice, and absolutely. And as a little girl that has grown up in politics my whole life, it is something that keeps you going. When you get to meet another lady that is fighting, and you think, "Oh my gosh, I can do it too." So I want to just, on behalf of women and little girls, thank y'all so much for being such great role models. I would like to know, you're both freshmen in the State House, and I would like to know if there was anything that was challenging for you, particularly that you did not expect, and something perhaps that was easier than you expected. Julie?
I guess the schedule was more challenging than I thought. It was crazy, right? I mean, you're up at oftentimes your committees start at 8 in the morning, and then we'll have committee hearings, and then we'll do that until early afternoon. We'll go to the floor for an afternoon session until 6. Then oftentimes the committees will resume back again at 6:30 and they can go until midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning sometimes. And and you do that again the next day. And just the sheer volume of bills and the volume of information that we're expected to digest, process, decide, is it good for us? Is it not good for you? And that's when you really have to rely on our friends, So Erin, for example, is a kind of one of our experts on the environmental policies. And so we all find our lane. I'm in healthcare policy. And so if there's a environmental bill, I'm going to look to Erin to say, hey, what is this? Do you think this is good? And I'll rely on her advice most of the time. And same thing, she'll look to me for healthcare. So you find your friends that can help you navigate the vast amount of information, but just trying to stay healthy and stay rested and to take care of yourself, and remember that you have to do some of that because the schedule is really, really hard.
Erin?
Yeah. I think one of the things I struggled with early on is some of the particulars of being a young woman in the legislature. I am the youngest woman member. I just turned 35, actually 2 days ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And there's sort of people make assumptions. People make assumptions about your qualifications and what you're able to do and whatnot. And I had an experience quite early on where it's a long story, but I had an amendment on the budget, and it was a really important amendment for my district. And there was a negotiation with it where I was supposed to be able to get it on the budget, and I had 3 chairmen plus another very senior member of the body decide that was a bad idea. And I had to go toe to toe with them, in my first month and a half in the legislature. And, it resolved in a way where I was able to have some really critical conversations about an issue facing my district, the Kinder Morgan Permian Highway Pipeline. But that was sort of the moment where I was kind of able to arrive, if that makes sense, and let some folks know that I had gumption and needed to be taken seriously. But I think every freshman has to find that moment of arriving at the body and sort of letting them know who they are. Something that, I don't know if it was easier, but was a really pleasant surprise to me. We had this really extensive orientation put on by the outgoing parliamentarian. And the thing that the senior members who came kept emphasizing was how important your word is. It's a very big deal in the legislature that members not lie to each other, because if you aren't fully honest with folks, why should they trust you? Why should they believe you when you give them information on a bill? Why should they believe you that you're not pulling something on them? As Julie said, we all have to rely on each other because no one person can hold every bit of knowledge about Texas policy. And so, not every member is perfect about that, but seeing how important that idea of our word being our bond with each other was a very pleasant surprise.
So, Erin, we imagine our Hollywood vision of what politics is like. The moment that you get elected, you start getting phone calls from these people called lobbyists. What does this all feel like? Does it all come at you 100 miles a minute, or how does it work, Erin?
I think it definitely does come at us 100 miles a minute, especially those of us who were election night surprises and didn't have people trying to build those relationships earlier. I found myself a little envious of our colleagues who knew they were coming back in March when they won a primary. Those of us who knew we were coming, November 6th, had to very quickly turn around and build an office and build relationships. And, the lobby is something that I think is not entirely understood by the public, but they are all human beings, and what your relationship is with them varies based on who they are, who they represent, how that intersects with your district. But that's absolutely it was very intense the first few weeks, because you're like, I'm here to do work for the people of Texas, not here to make friends. But, if I don't go make a whole bunch of friends, I'm not going to get anything done. So we're all going to go socialize and just get to know each other as quickly as possible so that we can be effective. And that's a very fast process while you're also trying to bring staff on and set norms and build out your legislative packet. It is the time from election day until the day we gavel in is very short.
Mm-hmm.
Julie, your thoughts?
I think it's, as you come in a little skeptical of the lobby. In our politics, lobbyists and PACs and stuff are evil and, we shouldn't be trusted. There's a lot of banter around that. But it's really, in a lot of respects, just not accurate. What they're there to do is to really help educate you on issues. And, there was plenty of lobbyists that came in my office on issues that I just flat out disagreed with. And I told them that. And I'm like, I don't agree with anything you're saying. And, I would never support that. And, part of it is they just want to know where we are. And it's not about that they're trying to necessarily improperly convince you to do something or vote for someone. It's really an education process. And then again, you find lobbyists, it's like everything, just like Aaron said, you develop trust relationships with members, but also with lobbyists. If a lobbyist lies to you about their bill and what it does and what their intent of that bill is, that lobbyist is over. Because if the members won't trust them, then they can't do their job. And so, it's an educational relationship more than anything to say, hey, this is our issue. This is why it's important to us. And, I think it's our obligation to listen and then we make our own decisions on if we agree or not.
Thank you. Julie, what's your proudest moment from it besides getting elected in your first term?
Well, there were so many really great moments. I was really proud when we passed that transformative education bill because it really represented so much of what Aaron and I did together in that, the session before, they couldn't pass anything. And the fact that we worked hard, won our elections, made a clear statement that the people of Texas demanded us to deal with education, I think was a real reason why we were able to get that bill done, because had Aaron and I not won and pushed the needle as hard, I don't think the legislature would have taken it seriously. And then, of course, on the LGBT front issues, our whole caucus worked together and we, really drove the narrative on our bills. We were able to kill 22 anti-LGBT bills in committee. And then the Chick-fil-A bill came to the floor and I was able to call a point of order and kill that. But our whole caucus worked together. We all did it as a team and we really helped and stood up for equality. And probably the day we really gave our personal speeches. We had a day there where we all talked about our personal journeys through LGBT equality and why that bill was so important. And I think us all coming together and bearing our souls, bearing our stories was one of the most powerful moments of the session for me.
Thank you. Aaron, same.
Yeah, I agree with Julie about those moments. And I think some of the most impactful moments are those ones that show this changing face of governance and know that we are impacting or that the conversation is different because we're there. And one moment I remember from when Julie called the point of order is somebody snapped a photo of all of the LGBTQ identifying members, all 5 of us arguing this point of order. And 5 women, 5 out LGBTQ women up there at the dais is powerful. I mean, we are still, as women, a minority, certainly as LGBTQ members, an even bigger minority. It was really powerful. And the other moment for me that was sort of along those lines, a smaller moment, but I have a really good friend who was sexually assaulted in Texas. She had great law enforcement officers, built a great case for her, and then the prosecutor sat on the case for over a year until the perpetrator was arrested for assaulting somebody else. He has now received justice, or on the other end of justice, I guess. My friends received justice. But it took somebody else being assaulted. And so inspired by that, I brought a bill to try and dig into the different prosecution rates and different referral to prosecution rates of sexual assault cases across Texas. And my friend wrote a letter. She was unable to come up to the Capitol. She actually lives in the Houston area. But an advocate read her letter to court. And it was so powerful to know that we wouldn't have had that conversation without it. The particular bill did not move forward, but luckily Rep. Donna Howard took me by the hand, who is a whiz with the budget, and helped me insert the language into the budget. So we will actually be getting an audit report this November on sexual assault prosecution methods across the state that we'll be able to use to design some policy to help make sure our investigators and our district attorneys have the tools they need to ensure everyone has a fair chance of justice.
That is so important. Thank you so much.
So, Aaron, tell me now, in for those of you in the audience viewing, especially those who are not from Texas, we only meet one time for 140 days. And then a whole year and a half passes before the election cycle again. So these ladies actually were in session for 140 days, this madcap session that they're talking about. And for the last year and a half, they've basically been at home doing constituent services. And so it's a strange concept. I know a lot of you who come from other states that they have year-round legislatures. We don't do that in Texas. So just to give you kind of a background. So Aaron, tell us about constituent services. What has that been like? What have you been seeing most? I mean, what are people asking for?
Yeah, recent times since COVID-19 hit, it's helping folks process their unemployment claims. That has been a huge part of our work, is helping people navigate this Byzantine system that desperately needed updating. We actually allocated dollars last session to update Texas Workforce Commission's unemployment system that was built in the 90s, but they were just about to sign the contract when the unemployment numbers went through the roof. So we've literally just been trying to help folks connect there, navigate that process. That's been our single biggest thing that we've helped with. But we've also helped folks navigate issues with insurance claims being refused, navigate issues with getting their social work license. It really runs the gamut of helping people with different state agencies and move forward through the process.
And Julie?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I haven't.
What's been your experience with constituent services? What have you seen the most need?
I found that, COVID has just really just changed the game for constituent services, and I think like Aaron too, we really focused a lot on unemployment benefits, really helping people. The frustration people had with unable to be able to get through the process was overwhelming. They would call, I can tell you, they would call crying on the phone because they would have been 4 days calling and calling and calling and never getting an answer and never getting through and just distraught with what to do. They would call us, and then fortunately we have a back line and we can call and get it and handle it. And so, and we were able to help thousands of people get their unemployment benefits that they so desperately needed. And then also assisting people with rental assistance. I think at the end of the day, what COVID has done is it's really highlighted a problem that we have where people don't know how to get access to resources. And there's just not a constant place you can go. There's not one source. Everybody has their own little source pages and you don't know about it. And, when you've got 3 kids and you've been laid off from your job and you're trying to figure all that out, you don't know necessarily where to go. So just being able to help facilitate access to all of the many benefits that were available during this time was very rewarding and really, really helped people.
Thank you both. I want to take this time to remind our viewers to please ask your questions in the comments. We already have some great questions coming in, but we also are requesting a donation of at least $20.20 in honor of 2020 for these candidates to get them to stay in the State House. Clearly, they are doing some fantastic work towards justice and equality, and we need to keep them there. So, Jaime?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to some issues of the day and get you all on record talking about what is 2021 going to look like. So Aaron, we'll start with you. And, the biggest issue of the day consistently under polling nationwide is healthcare. So let's start with that topic. Aaron, let me ask the question this way. How do we provide the most healthcare to the most Texans given our resources?
The biggest thing the state of Texas can do right now is expand Medicaid. The federal government offered the Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act that was passed back in 2009, I believe. It's been a while. And we haven't expanded Medicaid. We are one of 12 states who has not done that. What that means is that there are 1.5 million Texans who could have coverage under that who don't. They're also mostly Texans who are not eligible for subsidies under the Affordable Care Act to buy health insurance off the exchange. It also means that there's anywhere from $6 to $10 billion of our federal tax money that we are losing every year because we haven't expanded Medicaid. Mm-hmm. That is what would make a huge difference, and it would drive down healthcare costs for all Texans, because right now those folks who can pay either through insurance or cash end up underwriting the costs of all these folks who walk into emergency rooms and never pay their bills. So that is the single biggest step we can do.
Julie?
I completely agree with Aaron. I mean, Medicaid expansion is the absolute number one priority. But I think there's a lot of other things that we can do. You know, things that I've also tried to work on is people who actually have health insurance, making their ability to use their coverage a lot easier. We have way too many burdensome prior authorization requirements. We have way too much network inadequacy, not enough doctors in a network where you can actually get in, so that you're forced to see people out of a network, and you get really high out of network bills. You get wrongful denials of coverage of care. Your doctor orders a prescription, they refuse to fill it. They order a test, they say, oh, we're not going to do this. There's so much of it's just so hard to get that care. It's hard if you don't have access to insurance to get doctors to see you. It's hard if you do have access to insurance to actually get care, because there's so many roadblocks. And I think that, and that's where I've really focused the body of my work, is trying to address some of the problems that you can, which is the side of those that have health insurance. And I think the last issue is we have a huge insurance gap of people who are self-employed, work for small businesses. They don't have the capacity to be in a group. The risk can be allocated across for affordable premium. And they're not Medicaid eligible. They would never be eligible for Medicaid. And so we have a 5 million Texan insurance gap that we've got to deal with, and come up with maybe some sort of a public option or something to where we can pool resources and ability to assess risk to make insurance affordable.
Julia, it's like you read my mind. There's, I work in politics, but I also work in the entertainment industry, and there's a lot of gig economy jobs. And so, you have people that are going on COBRA, and it's just absolutely too expensive for people that are working these jobs. So I appreciate both of your comments on that. I'd like to turn now to another very Texan issue, which is guns. So, Julie, what does comprehensive gun policy look like to you?
Well, I was privileged to be appointed on the state gun committee that was appointed after the shootings in El Paso and Odessa. And I had the opportunity to participate in hearings throughout the state. And I actually traveled to hearings in Odessa and El Paso and got to hear directly from the shooting victims and what that whole experience was like. We have to close the gun show loopholes. We have to make background checks mandatory for gun purchasing in Texas from whatever point of sale there is. We have all these rules in place that certain people should not be eligible to own a weapon, or at least purchase a weapon. And if you have, there's a whole list of parameters. And the gun stores have those lists, they get flagged. But then if you fail your background check there, it's super easy to go over here to a show or to whatever and purchase a weapon and bypass that, which is exactly what happened with the shooter in Odessa, Texas. And, there's so many things, red flag laws, but the background check and really making sure we can regulate who owns a weapon, who's able to purchase it. And I think waiting periods, there's a lot of other issues, such as actually having a license, or at least having to pass a safety class. We all have to pass a safety test in order to get a driver's license. Mm-hmm. It's not an infringement on your rights to pass a safety class to be able to own a weapon. So I think there's so many things that we can be able to do.
Aaron?
Yeah, no, I really second everything that Julie said. The other piece I'll add is, Julie and I are both members of the Sportsman's Caucus. I know Julie's an avid hunter. I used to work for Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, which is a hunter-funded conservation organization. And I think we absolutely support hunting in Texas. We need to not treat your standard hunting rifle and a weapon of war the same way. And under Texas law right now, all long guns are regulated the exact same way. There is a very big difference between a bolt action rifle or a pump action shotgun and a semi-automatic weapon with a pistol grip. Those differences are real. And right now in Texas, open carrying any sort of long gun requires no permit whatsoever. And we've seen too many incidences of people carrying semi-automatic weapons, long guns, specifically to try and generate fear. It's an issue I've had in subdivisions in my district. And I think that's a conversation we need to have, is maybe regulating based on the action, the potential to cause a serious incident, instead of the length of the barrel. So that's something I'm really interested in having a bigger conversation about, as well as also talking about magazine size.
I gotta say, if I could just jump in for a second, it was awesome when Aaron and I joined the Sportsman Caucus, because we're in there with all these dudes and mostly Republicans who think they own the outdoors. Now, I'm not an avid hunter, but I do love to fish.
I'm sorry, Julie, I got that wrong.
My son loves to hunt, but I love water and I love being outside. But it was greatness, because so here we go to our first meeting in the Sportsman Caucus, and Aaron and I were both, we're not going to let them own this space, right? And so here we are. We're the only two Democratic women, right? And I think there's only one Republican woman. So there's only 3 women in this whole thing. And it's Aaron and I on the guys. But, I think it's important that we're there. Those are the rooms where a lot of these discussions are held about gun safety. And we're here to be, offer really compelling arguments on this discussion. And we have a good time. And, we can shoot skeet, and we are pretty good shots, both of us. And so I think we earned a little cred points on the side there too.
I don't know that this is a state issue, but I do think that we don't digitize our records for gun ownership. And I think that is a huge issue that we all need to address, because it's hard for jurisdictions to compare, if we don't have.
And that came up in our hearings, that we needed to do that and really work on more interagency communication, because it's pathetic.
Yeah,
we have right now.
Yeah, and I'll give a quick plug and say the only good thing we did on gun safety last session was Donna Howard managed to get $1 million in the budget for gun storage safety education. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is another really critical piece. I'm a gun owner. My guns are in a safe. I have a toddler. These are not options.
Right.
And making sure that we don't have tragic accidents or issues of weapons being stolen and then used to commit a crime.
Thank you both.
So let's turn to another big issue of the day, and of course, this is a very 2020 issue, but this is an issue that's been going on since the beginning of the founding of the country. It's just in 2020, it's been highlighted so much more. Social justice reform. Aaron, what does that mean to you?
Oh, social justice reform is a big umbrella. So I'm going to make that smaller to criminal justice reform for the moment.
Okay.
And say, I think that means a lot of things. It means making sure that folks are not arrested for low-level crimes. It means assessing whether or not some current crimes make sense, marijuana possession being an obvious one that the House actually did take action on last session, but the Senate did not move forward with. It means making sure that we look at police reform and setting some strong use of force standards that are in effect statewide, and making sure that we've got some minimum accountability standards for law enforcement officers as well. I have family who are in law enforcement. It is a hard job, but it's also a job that comes with a tremendous amount of power. And with power, you have to have accountability mechanisms in place. And I think it's pretty clear that those are broken. The case of Javier Ambler in the Austin area being a good example. So to me, that's, I think, where we're going to be focusing a lot. Another particular corner I'm really interested in that's related to the use of force standards is banning the use of less lethal munitions in crowd control situations. Because I have a 20-year-old constituent who has a permanent brain injury from being at a protest and being accidentally shot by law enforcement. So,
Julie, what does social justice reform mean to you?
Well, I think rather than restate everything Aaron just said about gun safety and police and all those sorts of issues, I think just let's just take LGBT issues. We still, even though we have a Supreme Court that makes it illegal to terminate you now from employment and we have the rights to marry, there were still 22 anti-LGBT bills filed in the past session. One of the ones that was the most egregious to me was to allow the medical community and physicians to deny care to LGBTQ folks based on their religiously held beliefs. And so I think that's just morally wrong to me. And I do believe that we're going to be facing next session an onslaught of attacks on equality for all different kinds of people under the guise of freedom for religion. And we're going to we're setting up for a real battle of the First and 14th Amendments. And it's going to be interesting. Our colleague, Jessica Gonzalez, is filing a comprehensive non-discrimination bill for the LGBTQ community that I'm excited to co-author with her. And hopefully we'll be able to get some movement and have some really positive discussions that Texas needs to be a state that is equal to all.
Thank you. Julie, I'll start with you on this one. this is it's a very big issue. So if I started talking about education, I could ask you a million questions. What's the difference between public and charter schools? What is the Robin Hood law? Funding for higher education? There are a million things. Getting Wi-Fi access to rural and urban communities. So I don't have that kind of time. So in a minute, Julie, fix the Texas education system for me.
Well, it starts with teachers. We had an adopted teacher program, and I was able to go and visit with 2 teachers in my district this week. And what I see are people that are working so hard to cover the gaps because they care so much. They're all working overtime because of COVID, because the districts are making them teach half in person, half remote. They're not getting paid for that. They don't have the equipment they need. They're not valued to the extent they need to be as in the relation they are to their importance in our society. So I think focusing on teacher pay, teacher opportunity will do so much to fix the system. Obviously, I was really pleased that we did mandatory pre-K because I think that is instrumental in making our children reading literate. And I think next session we need to expand that program to make it available for everyone, not just those that meet certain criteria. So I would like to see us focus on that too.
Thank you. Erin?
We just need a ditto button for this, don't we, Julie?
That's why we're friends, because we've lived this together. We agree on so many things.
But I'll say, I mean, absolutely, but with everything Julie said, but I think it's really important to remember that so much of this comes back to the dollars and to see the tension that we've created for so many, particularly our fast growing communities. I live in the 4th fastest growing county in the nation, in Hays County. And with being a fast growing county comes rapidly rising property valuations and therefore rising property taxes. And so many of my constituents don't know that the reason their property taxes keep going up is because the state of Texas stopped investing in public education. Now, Julie and I were part of the beginning of turning that around. We took the state investment in public education from 38% of the total to 45%. But when I was a public school kid in Texas, and I'm only 34, so it wasn't that long ago, it was 60%. The state paid 60% of that cost. Mm-hmm. So all of the cost increases in public education in the past 20 years have come from property taxes. And that, especially in areas that are rapidly growing or gentrifying, results in people's property taxes going through the roof. We have to fix our system so that when property valuations go up, that the state share doesn't go down, because our communities need those resources. And that's the only way to make sure everybody has it.
Do you hear these fantastic women viewers at home? Please donate $20.20 at the very least to their campaigns. Give them your time, give them your vote. Oh my gosh, we need to keep these amazing women in the State House. I've never been more inspired. I want to go hanging out with you guys in Austin.
Try to get a couple more questions in before the audience turn. And so, Erin, in 2017, the Houston area in East Texas was hit by one of the worst rain events in American history with Hurricane Harvey. And at the time, the Republican governor, Governor Greg Abbott, decided not to release funds from something called the Rainy Day Fund. What's your opinion about the Rainy Day Fund? What's the point of a rainy day fund if not for a rainy day?
Well, I want to acknowledge first, like what a challenging event Hurricane Harvey was for the entire Gulf Coast, and say that's something that House District 45 has felt as well. Obviously not with hurricanes, but flash floods. The 2015 flash floods that swept 130 homes into the Blanco River in Wimberley are still loom in everybody's minds here. And every time we have a heavy rain event, the question is, are we going to lose another life? It's a huge issue, and it was very frustrating that the governor did not take more action. The Rainy Day Fund, I hate calling it the Rainy Day Fund, though. It is the Economic Stabilization Fund. It was created in a great moment of foresight to make sure that we could even out our state expenditures in bad budget revenue years. And the reason why I'm going to hammer this even more this cycle is because we are in one of those bad revenue years now. We are going to have a tough time with our budget next session. I am really committed to making sure that we do not balance the budget on the backs of our kids or on the back of our healthcare system. And to do that, we're going to need to have some real conversations about accessing the Economic Stabilization Fund to keep our expenditures even. And what I want everybody to remember and to remind their neighbors of If the state cuts its budget dramatically, that is people losing their jobs. That is more people suffering. That is the state of Texas less they're able to give folks a hand up. So I think it's really critical that we are ready to have real conversations about how to responsibly use those dollars next session.
Julie, what are your thoughts?
I think we absolutely need to be prepared to use the fund. I mean, of course, ditto. I agree with you. We have to do that. But I think just to address some of the Harvey issues specifically, another area that we need to address is insurance reform. My home was actually struck by a tornado when we had the tornadoes up here in Dallas. And I got even though I'm a lawyer and I deal with insurance all the time, I got a firsthand perspective of what it's like to be a claimant. And there are so many things that we need to do to make property casualty insurance reform possible, to make it where insurance companies are required to pay upfront for the damages caused, not make insureds have to front the cost and then get reimbursed or argue with them. There needs to be some accountability for insurance companies for wrongfully denying claims, because I think that those issues just contributed so much to so many of the problems down on the Gulf Coast, because people weren't able to access the insurance that they had in place in a timely fashion to get their homes repaired. And so in addition to using that, I absolutely want to focus on some insurance reform next session, and I have several bills teed up ready to go on that.
When I first checked in with Julie after the tornado, one of the first texts I got was how many bill ideas she had from it.
I know. It was so
irritating.
It's because it's like, it's the old experience. You know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And that's why, I know I can speak for Erin. One of the best things in our office is I love it when a constituent calls me and say, I have a problem and I think I have a solution to how to fix it. And so I had a problem with my insurance company and being struck by a tornado, and now I have some solutions on how to fix it because I lived it, And I think that's just how it works. And so we need to hear from people.
I think we have time for one more question, Jaime, before we get to the audience questions.
Go for it.
Okay, this is something that I feel like Erin is going to have a million things to say if climate is your thing. But we are the energy corridor. We have lots of oil and gas here. But given the amount of amazing natural resources that we have here, solar, wind, and the like, how do we harness that and grow our alternative energy sector? And I'll start with Julie.
Well, the oil revenues in the industry is one of the lifebloods of Texas. And so we all recognize that, it's the oil taxes that actually fund the Economic Stabilization Fund, because the oil markets go up and down so much. But I think that they're not mutually exclusive. I think that's the biggest thing. You can have a robust oil economy and still invest in alternative energy sources. We have 28 going on 29, which will be going on 30 million people in this state. And, there's, our population in our country is increasing and uses so much of the energy produced here in the Gulf Coast. They're not mutually exclusive. We just need to do that. We need to help transition and provide alternative sources of power and energy, or else, there's a finite supply of the petroleum, and there's a finite supply there. And we just have got to expand what we have, utilize what we have to bring as much energy independence as we can.
Erin?
Yeah, I think the conversation around climate change has changed a lot as we've seen accelerating natural disasters. I mean, that's the other thing that came up with Harvey and other flash flood events. During last legislative session, there was a conversation about a big flood mitigation package, and we had two committee chairmen talking back and forth about it, and both very carefully not saying climate change, while they acknowledged that it was flooding more, but they weren't going to say why. The why is climate change. We know this. And we have to take it seriously. And the economy is already starting to shift. Texas is an energy leader, and I want us to remain an energy leader. And we don't stay an energy leader by denying what's happening. I've got a little brother who is 25. He started in school for petroleum engineering, and then he dropped out and went to go work in solar with my other brother. Because he didn't know what the economic future was. Right. And so I think a lot of Texans feel that uncertainty. So the way we get around that is we invest in renewables now, and we invest in those jobs too. And so we are looking at options about upgrading our transmission infrastructure and our grid, which will both make it more stable and disaster resistant, as well as provide a path to bring more renewables to market, and also investing in electrification. The other area where there is opportunity is to invest in carbon capture and sequestration. And that's something that I think Texas is poised to be a leader in, especially because of our industry in the Gulf Coast.
So we are out of time for our questions. Now the audience gets their turn, and we have a lot of questions lined up. And audience members, keep sending in your questions. Remember, you can go to Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Look up Blue Outpost TX Democrats, Blue Outpost TX Democrats, and you can put your questions there on the official page. I know you might be watching this from a shared page or a watch party or something. Try to go to the official page to ask your questions, and that way our team can find those questions very easily. So we'll start with you, Aaron. And this question actually comes from one of our great Democratic candidates for the State Board of Education, Michelle Palmer, and she asks about something called that's colloquially known as the no homo promo bill. And so the idea is in education in Texas, if you talk about LGBTQIA issues in school, you have to follow that along with information about the fact that it's a risky lifestyle. And so every conversation has to be followed with the idea that it's a risky lifestyle. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, that's just not grounded in the facts of the world. And let's be quite clear about that. I know a lot of parents are afraid of their teenagers becoming sexually active and that resulting in a pregnancy. And that is not a risk in same-sex relationships. So I just want to say that is false. And it is ridiculous the number of places where the state of Texas requires people to deliver false information. And it's particularly offensive when we do it to youth. So LGBTQ people exist. They exist when they are children, and they are not going to stop existing if we don't tell people about them. That's just not how any of this works. I absolutely support comprehensive sex education, which includes making sure that we tell young people about LGBTQ issues and make sure that they know that's okay and that's affirming. Julie and I talk about this a lot with the LGBTQ caucus. Our biggest concern is how do we protect children? And a big way we protect children is making sure that they have some affirming space in their life. And I would like one of those spaces to be our schools.
Julie, your thoughts?
I completely agree. I think that the disclaimer is absolutely ridiculous. It's outdated. It's inaccurate. And, it just has no business. It would be refreshing if the state of Texas was actually committed to accurate information. What a concept there. It's just wrong.
Fantastic.
Let me make sure, because I forgot to tell you, for this next half hour, let's do 30-second answers so we can get in as many questions as possible from the audience. So, sorry, take it away, Carly.
Joey Gidzik from the Texas Democrats with Disabilities asks, what will the next session look like? Yes, will they allow virtual testimony, virtual hearings? What have they heard? What can we anticipate?
I have no idea. They haven't set those rules. They're talking about it. They have not. We had to fill out a member survey about what we were willing to do. My guess is what's going to happen is that the members will be there. They'll probably have some restriction on access to the Capitol to the public. We'll still have committees. I'm hoping they'll have a virtual component. They rejected that last time. Probably a situation where you're like at the meat counter and you take a number and just let a few people in at a time. It's probably what I'm envisioning happening.
Yeah, we will set what rules we operate under once we convene. That's actually been one of the really frustrating things in the interim is we can't have virtual committee hearings because our rules don't allow it, and we can't meet to change our rules unless the governor calls us for a special session, and he is not. So here we are stuck and trying to govern by letter, which is infuriating. Really looking forward to us being able to resume normal oversight hearings because they're especially critical right now. So we don't have a lot of answers. The House Admin Committee is putting together ideas, but the folks who will actually make that decision are the legislators. So I will say, if you want folks who are going to prioritize public access and public safety together, elect more Democrats. We'll do that.
Okay,
Democrats.
Aaron, this author asks about fracking. What are your thoughts on fracking?
My thoughts is
In
we
30
need to have,
seconds. In 30 seconds.
we need to have some real conversations about what the potential impacts are. And quite frankly, that information is not easily available in Texas. There's lots of ideas, lots of questions about whether or not it contributes to other increased seismic activity. But we haven't been able to have that vigorous conversation because of the way state government works with the oil and gas industry. Mm-hmm. So I will say, I think local control is important. I would support giving cities and counties back the ability to have some authority there. But we need to have a deeper conversation about long-term impact.
Julie?
Same.
Love it. Okay, Julie, what are your two top issue bills that you will be pre-filing this November?
Ooh. Well, again, it goes back to healthcare. You know, I'm filing. There's so many things, but you know, my prior authorization bills that I worked on last time, I'm definitely going to be filing that. There's several tied up in that, and then I just have a body of other insurance reform issues that I'm dealing with. So that.
Aaron?
In the state of Texas, you could only file a sexual harassment complaint if your employer has 15 or more employees. We filed legislation for that last session to fix it and allow everyone to file a sexual harassment complaint with Texas Workforce Commission. Almost got it over the finish line, timed out on deadline. I am determined to get that over the finish line next session. The other big thing my team is working on is the Texas Climate Plan to set some climate targets, set a timeline to end routine flaring, and start working on the economic transition issues.
Aaron, give us a human moment for a second and tell us, are you personally afraid of contracting COVID during this next session?
You know, honestly, I think during session, I will be a little bit less afraid than where I've been this cycle. And the reason for that is in April, I moved my 92-year-old grandmother in with me. She had been in a rehab facility she'd been in a hospital, then rehab. And my family, we were acknowledging she couldn't live alone. And the option was to send her to a nursing home or for a family member to step up and bring her in. And I did. And it's meant that I've been very aware of the risk because I know that my grandmother likely will not survive. So it's actually going to shift for me a little bit. My household will be lower risk because we are working on transitioning my grandmother back to her own home with professional help right now.
Julie?
You know, I think you have to respect the disease. You have to respect the level of contagion that it is and the level of harm that it can cause on people. But I think in the session, you know, we're going to be fairly well protected and we'll have plenty of PPE. We'll have plenty of regulations and requirements, and we're all well educated on methods to stay safe. I think that the question is going to be, our biggest risk is going to be if some of our more conservative, crazy, immature Republican colleagues refuse to wear a mask and we have to fight with them. That's going to be probably kind of our biggest exposure risks of anything. So.
We really need to create a space on the floor for people who don't take it seriously that is far away from our higher risk members.
Area.
Yeah, you go face the corner, go stand in the corner.
Here's your plexiglass box. Go over there.
Up and wear a mask. Sanitize your hands. Nobody wants your germs. We don't want yours. If people do that, then it's not that hard to have a substantial mitigation of the risks.
Care and concern. Oh, what a thought. What an amazing concept. Okay, a viewer also asks, Julie, what is your grade for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality?
Well, I probably wouldn't give it a very high grade because we still have so much high pollution in our state and we have so many water quality issues that are not resolved. And, I just think, our environment, we get one shot at it, and, clean water and drinkable water is a real issue. And it's a concern that I think we're going to have going into the future that we better deal with now. It's just kind of like why the people that came before us put the Economic Stabilization Fund in place so that we can deal with it now. Aaron and I and our colleagues, we're going to have to deal with clean water because I think that that's going to be one of the biggest problems we face in the next 20 years.
Aaron?
C-. It would have been a D, but they had a hearing today where they are talking about trying to update their penalty structure so that they can actually provide some real disincentive to polluters. Now, I do want to contextualize that the TCEQ enforces Texas laws, and so legislators bear a good bit of the blame for the grade I am giving them. But we need to encourage a proactive culture of compliance, and we've seen way too many major incidents recently, the ITC fire, the KMCO explosion. We saw the really lax penalties associated with Formosa Plastics until a big national settlement was 1,000 times the fines leveled by TCEQ. They've got to step up and do a better job, but we as the legislature have to give them the guidelines and authority to do so.
Aaron, this viewer wants to know, what incentives could y'all offer, or are you thinking about offering to incentivize homeowners to go solar on their individual homes?
Yeah, so the incentives in every part of the state are different. There is not a lot of consistency. You can deduct your solar panels from your property tax valuation. So adding solar panels does not up your taxable property base, and that's good. I'm really glad we have it. I actually filed legislation to do something similar for rainwater collection and other water conservation tools. But the challenge is that every single solar customer or solar installer at their home has to figure out what type of deal the provider will give them, and it's different. So I think we can establish a solar bill of rights where we are saying these are the minimum standards that every single utility has to offer their customers when they install solar. And that would create a lot more consistency, make it easier for people to figure out if the numbers add up for them.
Julie?
I agree with Aaron.
Okay, that's
well. She's really the environmental expert. We only have 12 seconds anyway, so we might as well just agree and go on to something else.
Well, it was good I got healthcare first, Julie, because I was able to say Medicaid expansion and then let you go into the weeds.
Exactly. We all have our lane.
One of the questions that we get from almost every forum is the legalization of marijuana, both medical and recreational. And what are your thoughts, Julie?
Well, we absolutely, I agree with all of it, but we absolutely need to expand it medically. I mean, medical use cannabis should be up to doctors to prescribe for their patients. I don't believe the state should be able to regulate therapies that are available to medical professionals to make what's in the best interest of their patients and the clinical symptoms that they present. So I think it should be a full wide open use medically at a minimum, and I support the full legalization. I think that the small amounts that we have such an incarceration problem over small amounts of marijuana, and we have a cash bail problem really heavily influenced by that aspect of life. And I just think there's so much that we could do to improve the life of Texans, have another revenue source for the budget, minimize criminal justice issues. I just think there's so many positives that come from legalization. Thank you, Aaron.
I agree, and I am not sure why so many folks seem determined to keep sending this potential tax revenue to Colorado. Let's keep it in Texas. There's no reason that possessing marijuana should result in somebody having a lifelong record and other the potential issues that go along with that. I think the people of Texas are ready for legalization. We need to pull the legislature itself along.
You know what's just crazy about it, though, is the same people who say that the state of Texas can't require you to wear a mask. It's a free infringement of their freedoms. The same that wants to regulate all that. They're all up in arms of, oh no, the state must regulate marijuana. It's so inconsistent that the hypocrisy on some of their bases for why they do what they do is just.
I'm using that argument from now until the end of time, because that is a great point. That is a very great point. It's very much like they're hijacking.
They're all for freedoms,
the pro-choice movement. My body, my rights. With
all
a mask, except when it comes to a woman's right to choose.
Exactly. There's that too.
It's all.
Yeah.
Both.
Let's get back to the can of worms that the audience wants to hear about now. So, Aaron, talk to us about the for-profit prison industry in Texas.
I've got a for-profit prison in my district, and we need to not have for-profit prisons. Full stop. the profit motive is powerful. I think it's really useful to step back and think about the economics of things. We do not want to create a situation where there is a financial incentive to lock people up. And that is what we have done by outsourcing incarceration to private entities. It is a perverse incentive. I want the only factors in our decision-making about our penal codes to be public safety. I want us to be thinking about public safety and how we help folks get back into society, not thinking about the profit motive that is associated with some companies being paid to incarcerate folks.
Mm-hmm.
Julie, where are you at on that issue?
Well, I totally agree with Aaron, and I think that also transcends into another area, which is for-profit CPS. It's anytime we see the government trying to let companies earn a profit, and I saw this in for-profit education as well. When you're required to take money at the expense of young children, when you're required to take money at the expense of prison care to make a profit, those are functions that the state needs to do. We don't have a desire to earn a profit. We put all those resources into benefiting those systems, and it's just wrong.
Thank you. We have a bunch of questions. I'm not sure that we're going to get to all of them. So ladies, if we don't get to all of them, please, I know our viewers would love to have your answers. Go back on Facebook, Blue Outpost TX Democrats, answer the questions. But we do have some great questions still. Texas' response to COVID has been spotty at best. What would you propose needs to be put in place to prepare Texas, and I can't believe I'm going to say these words, for the next pandemic? Julie.
Well, for one, we need to have a comprehensive response that makes sense. You can't just, regulate it knee jerk based on the political whims of a few crazy people. So the problem that we've had is the governor has had such a yo-yo, hokey pokey effect on, do we wear masks, do we not masks? Are we opening, are we not opening? Are we having virtual school, are we not having virtual school? Just the whole thing. We need to just, I think, really put in place a comprehensive plan to prepare, make sure we have stockpile of supplies. When this whole thing came down, the fact that we weren't prepared for PPE, for healthcare in our hospitals, when our hospitals didn't have a mask and a surgical gown, that is insane that we were not prepared for that. So, I just think that we just really need to dig into it. And hopefully the legislature this next session will have a chance to look back at what went wrong and put some things in place to make it better and going forward.
Aaron?
Yeah, I agree with everything Julie said, and I'll add that we need to reinvest in our Department of State Health Services. I absolutely believe that every single person in the Department of State Health Services has been doing the best they can. And I also firmly believe there were not enough people and there were not enough resources. I remember asking for the budget for public outreach about mask wearing, and there is no budget number. They just post the video on Twitter and hope it takes off. There's so many things that we didn't do because we didn't invest in it. And that's why we've struggled so much with consistent data and data standards. I know every county's doing their own data a little differently. It's because we haven't invested in these public health resources. As part of this overall ideology of smaller government being better. Well, we needed it during this pandemic and we weren't ready.
So Aaron, the viewer wants to know, if you could undo any one piece of legislation from the last session, what would it be?
Oh, goodness.
Just
You
one.
said that in the first bill my mind went to was 2017, SB4. The affiliate ban, though. Last session, the affiliate ban where localities cannot work with any healthcare organization that has or is connected to an organization that provides abortions. That's something that was pitched as, not letting taxpayer dollars go to abortions, but that's a lie. The bill was about punishing organizations like Planned Parenthood and was specifically targeted at some of their clinics that didn't even provide abortion services, that provided low-income healthcare and cancer screenings and birth control to Texans. So to me, that's the one that had the biggest negative impact on our community off the top of my head. I'm sure Julie will think of another one. But it hurt a lot of people. And that, if I could wave a magic wand, it'd be at that one.
Julie, what would your magic
The
moment?
affiliate band night was a hard night. We were all rallied together, and I mean, that was a tough night for our caucus for sure. But I think you can also even go back to one of the biggest fights we had, which was HB2 and the regulation, the continued attempts to regulate our local cities and counties from having the revenue to provide needed public safety services, road repair, all the things that our cities and counties do. I don't understand this conflict that some of our state leaders have gotten into and why they're declaring war on our cities and counties. And that kind of went down. And then also, well, I guess that's it, really. I mean, there's so many things that we can choose from, but the little stopwatch guys up there, wait.
We're clicking along, getting a lot of questions and answers in.
Hours long substantive discussion. I really do feel like we could just talk forever. And there are so many things that so many Texans and voters just in general don't know about the process and the things that are passed in session. So I appreciate your time and your honesty and being able to explain a lot of these things in a really easy way to understand. It's very important. Our next question, kids who have high quality early learning experiences do better for the rest of their lives. What policies would you support to make sure all kids have access to great early learning experiences and parents have affordable childcare so that they can go to work and go to school? Julie.
Well, that's a loaded question. That's like everything we need to fix. But I completely agree. We need to have, a clear, improved broadband policy. And I think one of the things that's been highlighted from this is that people with remote learning and young kids, they don't have access to the internet or quality internet such that they can do video and all those sorts of things. But I'm also a huge proponent of STEAM, not STEM, and arts education for young people. The research is really clear that when young people get exposed to music education in particular and arts education prior to the age of 6, it really enhances their overall intellectual development in literacy and in math. And so I would love to see us put a lot of effort into the arts, into the young as well. Early arts education, I think that's very important.
Erin?
Yeah, I think Julie addressed the education side, so I'll talk about childcare a little bit. I had a lot of folks ask me why my daughter was at the Capitol so much, and there are lots of versions of this answer, but one version is we couldn't afford to stick her in a childcare. Like, it would have been like twice my state salary. I mean, our state salary is nothing, but it literally would have been twice the monthly state salary. It would have been $1,200 for us to place her in childcare when she was under a year old, and we couldn't afford that. And then on top of that, it's not like there was anything with any openings anywhere near the Capitol. I did call around and look. There were no openings within 5 miles of the Capitol. Zero. The facility closest to the Capitol that actually is somewhat state subsidized had a 2-year wait. 2-year wait. So I think we don't talk enough about how access to childcare and access to affordable childcare impacts mostly women's ability to participate in the economy. I know in my district, to get access to subsidized childcare, it's over a 2-year wait as well. And so that really impacts women's ability to go to work. And these are people who want to be employed and productive and can't access it. So we've got to reinvest.
Or the elected officials.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, Erin was amazing. Just put yourself in her position of having an infant, a 4-month-old, and you're trying to care for her and all the needs that they have and be, superstar legislator and try to do everything that needs to be done all at the same time with all the schedule and all the issues we've already talked about. It was really hard for her. And, she had to really, she was tired some days.
I feel mothers across
tired, and
feel that.
I think there were some times on the floor where Erin was just thrilled when it was sort of past the cute baby around. We're like, oh, I want to hold the cute baby, or I want to hold the cute baby. And she's like, oh dear God, thank you. I can have a little bit of a break. Because it's really hard being a young working mother. And I think having Erin in that situation was really important in the House because it reminded everybody what young mothers have to go through. And just even nursing and just the whole thing, everything about it. It's good for all these men to have to see up close and personal what it's like to be a young mother and working with your child and having to deal with it all and doing it all. That's the thing. It was good.
So we
Well, thank you, Julie. I hope us being visible made it easier for some other young mothers out there.
I do too, and it didn't hurt that Lark is like super cute. So I mean, that was certainly a bonus plus.
We're going to get to one more audience question, and then Carly's going to give it to you to give a closing statement. And really, in that closing statement, if you'll talk about your district and tell us the wonderful things about your district, the opportunities that exist, and what 2021 is going to bring for you. So first, though, let me ask one last question from the audience, and I've just randomly selected. There are a lot of extra questions, so if you have time, go back to the Facebook page, and you'll probably enjoy reading some of those extra questions that we didn't get time to. So this one last question is about election security and voting. Where do we stand? How do we get to a point where we just have automatic voter registration in Texas? Aaron?
Well, sorry.
Sorry, go
ahead, Julie. You started.
I was going to say, have Democrats win. I mean, we filed these votes, we filed these bills, and they didn't get passed through. But it is inexcusable that we do not have online voter registration in particular. I find it shocking that the internet is safe enough that we can pay our taxes from it. But it's not.
Didn't they just release today, though, to go online, to allow online voter registration with your driver's license? I think that went into effect today, actually.
Well, I don't know if that's the case, but I don't think you can still go on and maybe in conjunction with your driver's license. But if you already have a license, you can't just go online and register to vote. It is arcane. It is ridiculous. But hopefully we'll be able to take over and lead the way to 2022 and sweep it all. And actually, we may be able to pass some actual improved voter access legislation that's so desperately needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for the folks that were able to take that case to court and argue that Texas wasn't following the motor voter law and get something up there. It's not a full solution yet. We need it expanded for everybody. But I'm grateful, especially because I've met folks who believed they were registered because they checked a box at the DMV and didn't realize there was another step. And then they lost their opportunity to vote because of it. And that's wrong. I went to school in Montana, and I was improperly purged while I was at the University of Montana from the voter rolls. And I showed up to vote 2008 for Barack Obama, and I wasn't registered. And I was so grateful that day that we had same-day voter registration, because I was able to vote. And I want to say, this is, the liberal bastion of Montana, had same-day voter registration. That is something we can do in Texas. So I think it's really important that we protect everyone's access. I don't want any young person to show up at the polls and be turned away because they are confused by Texas's rules or because we have made it hard for them to vote. And that's something that we definitely have the technological capacity to do and must move forward on.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being such fantastic guests tonight. I have learned quite a lot. I have been inspired quite a lot. I hope every viewer at home goes and donates $20.20 at the very, very least to each of their campaigns. Donate your time. Make sure you get their names out to your neighbors so that they will vote for them too. We need to keep the State House, these women in the State House, and we need to turn it blue. So please do all you can. Ladies, thank you so much once again. And I'm going to give you 1 minute to wrap up, and I will start with Aaron.
Yeah, I just want to say that we have such an opportunity this cycle. When I decided to dive into Texas politics, it was because I helped organize the Electoral College demonstration at the Texas Capitol, and it was watching to see that no one could call the election for Donald Trump until Texas voted. We are the most important state in the country. We are the biggest swing state in the country. And the moment that Democrats flip the state house or win a statewide race, everything is going to pivot around us. I believe that year is 2020, so I hope y'all stay engaged. My district is half rural, half suburban, and it's proof that Democrats can compete and fight everywhere. It is proof that Democratic policies are good for all Texans, and we just have to get the word out about it. So we've got 40 days. Please help us do that. Leave everything on the field. Don't have any regrets November 4th.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And the last word goes to Julie.
Well, we need your voice. We need your vote. We need you to be involved. We need your support. You know, we're having to spend a lot more money in this cycle because Democrats are, you know, being responsible, and we're not door knocking to the extent that we did last time. And so we're having to make that up in other ways. So if you could support my campaign at Julie Johnson for Texas, I'd be most grateful. You asked me about my district. I have the most diverse district in the state with 78 different nationalities. I had my campaign language translated into 12 different languages to make sure that our message was accessible to all of our voters. And for that, I think we've had a really strong campaign, and we're projected to win strongly again. But, you know, it's going to take everyone here to get out and vote for every Democrat up and down the ballot. You know, that is going to be critical because the forces against us really don't want us to win this time. And they're putting records amounts of money because our message is working, because our message stands up for everyone, and they don't have anything but money to try to keep us down. So we really need your help. We need you to vote. I want you to support our campaigns if you would, please. But also, please get in your head and make sure you identify 10 people. I got 10 people out there, and I'm going to make sure that they vote. And if everyone does that, then there's no doubt in my mind that we'll seek victory in November, and it'll be a wonderful day.
Thank you both so much. Early voting begins October 13th. Election day is November 3rd. Get out there, be safe, make your plan to vote, vote early. And ladies, again, thank you so much for your time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much. This was a great event.
Thank you. And join us next Sunday, this coming Sunday, same time, same bat channel. We'll be interviewing 2 or 3 other freshman representatives. We're very excited. See you there.
Aaron, great to see you.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good night.
Bye.